Hello everybody, Raven Knight here, and welcome back to For Honor Executions Graded. I am so excited to be taking a look at Peacekeeper today. This is going to be so awesome. Now, some of you who are new might be saying, what's this, Raven? Well, if you'll take a look in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see a link to a video called That's an Execution, and if you want the full details on what this series is all about, click on that video, go take a look, and it'll explain everything. For those of you who still just need a refresher on things, I'll explain it briefly. I take a look at each For Honor hero's unique executions and grade each of them based on 4 criteria: how deadly they are, how realistic they are, how efficient and effective they are in battle, and just how cool they look. And then after putting all the grades down that they have, and then adding them all up and dividing by the number so that I can get my average, a little bit of math for you, I then come up with an overall grade for their executions. I've done this with the Vanguards, and I've done it with a couple of Assassins now, Orochi and Berserker to be exact, and today we're taking a look at Peacekeeper. I am super excited to be taking a look at this one because Peacekeeper is actually one of my favorites, and for those of you who are currently watching, go ahead in the chat, go ahead and post your predictions. Where do you think Peacekeeper is going to fall? I'd love to see your predictions as we get started. While y'all are doing that, we'll go ahead without any further ado and jump right into Peacekeeper's executions. I'm excited. Let's do this. We're starting things off with Deadly Embrace. Boy, that was a fast one. I almost didn't even get to say the title before it was done. Alright, so for lethality, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 4. This is pretty lethal. The cut across the throat, I really like the way she does this. We haven't seen a whole lot of throat slits in the game so far, but Peacekeeper is the perfect warrior to do that. Dragging a dagger across the throat. Now, here's the thing about throat slitting executions. I do like them, but the key to doing it is you gotta get in deep enough. A shallow cut to the throat will not necessarily kill, or at least not right away, and it could be treated or stitched up. You've got to get in real deep, and here, from the looks of it, she buried the knife very deep in. She took her time dragging it across, like almost saw it a little, and then allowed him to fall back. That was good. That will not be easy to stitch up. This man is probably going to die within a few seconds. He is done. So, excellent for lethality, but for realism, I also gave it a 4 out of 4. I think this is very realistic. This is certainly something you could do. I really like the way she does that. In fact, it looks like she's using her longsword to hold him in place, and I like that too. I like the threatening way she does that. I also like the way she kind of looks at him. It's kind of intimidating. For efficiency, this is a 4 out of 4. She has all blades. In fact, what I think is so funny about this is she's holding Warden in front of her, almost like the way you'd use a human shield, like a body shield. Almost like she's taking him hostage, but instead of saying, nobody shoot me or he dies, she's just, jumping right to the dying part. That's Peacekeeper style. She's not one to wait around, which I really like. For cool factor, I really did want to give it a 4, but I couldn't. I had to give it a 3. For one reason, at the end of the day, it is just slitting the throat. Nothing fancy about it, nothing unique about it, kind of just, I'm just going to cut your throat. And don't get me wrong, that fits Peacekeeper's personality, but I kind of wanted to see a bit more, especially since she's just kind of hiding behind him a little bit. I would have liked to seen a little bit more flash from this, but hey, you know what? 3 is still pretty good. The way I look at it, 3 is good. It's good, just not great. So this execution gets a 15 out of 16, which is a 94%. Strong start for the Peacekeeper. Next up is Mobilitate Vijat, or Vijit. I'm sure I mispronounced that. What an execution. I really like this one. So for lethality, that's a definite 4 out of 4. So what we're looking at here is she's stabbing into the neck and then yanking out the side. What I like about this is she twists the dagger inside the neck before yanking it out. Now, the strike into the throat itself alone would be enough to kill because you've punched through the throat, out the back, probably going to be punching through the vertebra, through the spinal column that's going down the neck. But then she finishes off by yanking it out the side. So I got to give points for lethality there. For realism, also this is a 4 out of 4. I think that this would definitely work. Even though it is one-handed and that's a little off, I would have liked to have seen 2 hands on that since she buried her dagger into his back and had room for both hands. I also think the fact that she twisted it helps as she's already getting some cutting done inside of the neck tendons and muscle. So I do like that setup. For efficiency, it's a 4 out of 4. This is very fast. And yes, I know she leaves her dagger in his back, but that's not a big deal to me. She still has her short sword. She didn't completely disarm herself. She just left that in his back and then used her other weapon to finish the fight. And then she did retrieve her dagger very quickly, so I don't have a problem with that. That's efficiency 4 out of 4. And for cool factor, I gotta say 4 out of 4. It's fluid. Every movement matters. Every movement has purpose and it's precise. I like the style of it. It is very flashy. Dodging his initial punch to get in that back strike. knocking him in the head and then following up with a strike through the throat. I definitely like that. I think that's fantastic. So this was a 16 out of 16, which is a 100%, a perfect execution from PK. Excellent. Next up is Arantia Lumenat Felut. All right, well, we have a decapitation now, guys. A decapitation, that's always definite 4 out of 4 lethality, because if you lose your head, you're definitely dead. For realism, though, I had to give this a 2 out of 4, and I'll explain why. It's not just the guillotine part, I mean, that's part of it, I'm not sure the way she brings the sword down on the neck, that would be enough to cut it off. That feels almost like more what a scissor would do, not a guillotine. Keep in mind, guillotines are incredibly heavy, and they also are dropped from a great height with incredible speed to take off the head. Here, that height and weight is definitely not there, so I have a little bit of question about how easily they could take off the head, but that's not even my only problem with it, and we'll talk more about this with efficiency too. But the issue here is, too much has to work for this to happen, and that makes it a little unrealistic. First, you have to be sure that when you throw the sword into the ground, it's going to stick up at the proper angle and stay there. And two, you have to make sure that your hook kick knocks him into the right spot for you to even take off his head. Do you know how difficult that's got to be to pull off? The stars have to align in order for you to set this up properly. So for realism here, I gave it a 2. The only reason I gave it a 2 and not a 1 is because technically, people do win the lottery. Sometimes you can get that lucky stroke, so I'll grant it that much. So that's a 2 for realism. For efficiency, I gave it a 3. And the reason I gave it a 3 is not because she disarmed herself. That's not the reason here, because she still has her dagger. My issue here is this was entirely unnecessary. As cool as it is, and as fast as it is, that's all that saves it in efficiency. It's unnecessary. You didn't need to kick him. You didn't need to kick him. You could have thrown your sword into him. You could have stabbed him through the chest. You could have cut off his head while he was standing. You could have stabbed him through the throat. You could have done a lot of stuff here. The kick and the follow-up was entirely unnecessary. So that's why it gets a 3 for me. But it's fast enough. It's lethal enough. It doesn't leave you disarmed. That's all fine, but it still loses a point because you didn't need to do this. And then for cool factor, 4 out of 4. I know that I just ripped into it, but this is so cool. When the stars align in such a way that you can pull off a badass execution like that, yeah, take it. Peacekeeper is a dancer of death, and this proves it. This is so awesome. I love that jump. I love the follow-up down and then the taking off of the head. It's just awesome. So excellent execution, which gives us a 13 out of 16, which is an 81%. Next up is Skilled Cut. Oh, man, this is going to be hard to talk about. All right, so, I mean, we got a decapitation, first of all, so 4 out of 4 for lethality, but let's move on to realism, and, oh, boy, this is a 1 out of 4 for realism. So much doesn't work here. Let's break it down from point 1. She blocks his punch with the crossguard of her short sword. I'm sorry, that doesn't work. First of all, your crossguard shouldn't be sharp enough to be able to block a blow like that or hold it in place. In fact, the only thing getting cut here that's getting hurt would be your own hand by grabbing the blade like that. I don't think that's the way you should do it. And then she jabs into his leg, which is fine. It brings him down to his knee. And then she takes off his head with her short sword, but she's holding it on the wrong end again. How do you know you're not going to hit him with the crossguard? How do you know you're not going to hit him with the handle? The handle and crossguard would not take off his head, so that shouldn't work. Because, think about it, guys. If I were to take a swing at you with a sword, I have everything from where the crossguard starts to the tip of the blade to cut off your head with. But here, I'm holding on to the tip of the blade. So that means that I have everything from where my hand is to the crossguard. That's a much smaller amount of blade. That's a much smaller cutting area. You have a much less likely chance of taking off his head and more likely chance of clubbing him with your own crossguard. No, I don't like that. And then finally, she catches his head with her dagger. And even the game recognizes this is stupid, because half the time when this execution happens, her dagger and the head don't even meet at the right time. Look at it here. Well, look at that. The head is already sliding off the dagger. That looks so silly. And so, no, that does not happen. You could not do that. Efficiency, it's a 2. It's a 2 because you're not using the blade the correct way. It's inefficient. And then stopping to stab the head as it falls. That is such a waste of energy. It's technically quick enough, and it's definitely deadly, and she never disarmed herself, so that helps. But just, that was so unnecessary, and jabbing the head like that, why would you do that? You took off his head. Why did you need to stop and catch his head with your dagger? There was no need for that. But was it cool? Cool factor? 4 out of 4. I know. I just ripped it apart with all those gradings, but it's cool. It's so funny. It's over the top. I think what I like about this is how over the top it is. It is just so silly, so over the top, and something about that just speaks to me. I think sometimes, look, it may not be realistic. It may not be totally efficient, but there are times you do have to just say, you know what? That was stupid, but I had a good time doing it. So that's why cool factor exists, guys. Sometimes that X factor that you can't really explain, like, that helps it here, which gives it an 11 out of 16, which is a 69%. You know what? I think that's a fair grade for this just messed up execution. Woo, what a ride. Let's move on. Next up is the Wing Breaker. So a couple things to say about the Wingbreaker. First of all, I do think it's lethal. What I like about this lethality, what I like about the lethality of this is the way she puts the swords in. She doesn't punch them straight through out the chest. She pushes them downward. That means that they're going to be cutting definitely through every artery, every organ that they can get. The lungs, the stomach, probably the heart, the liver. They're going to be hitting everything they can going down. You're damaging multiple organs. This is definitely going to kill. So for lethality, 4 out of 4. For realism, 4 out of 4. You could do this. I don't like that she uses one hand to push the sword down. I'd prefer to see two hands, but I've let slide worse things before. And efficiency, 1. And try to guess why. She takes her hands off both swords. She plants them in the body, lets them go, and then steps back. You don't do that. Do not leave your weapons embedded in the enemy and take time to admire your handiwork. Pull them out. You've stabbed the guy, pull them out. There are lots of reasons why. Yes, I know he's incapacitated, but if you're on the battlefield, you now don't have a weapon. And in this brief period, you're not holding on to your weapons. What if an enemy decides to come up and engage you? You can't risk that. Never let go of your weapons. Second of all, while they're embedded in there, you're preventing further bleed out. You want to pull out the weapon so that the bleed out can continue. So, efficiency, no, that's a 1 here. And for cool factor, I do have to give this a 2. The only cool thing I like about this is the way she jumps down to bring her knee down on the back of the leg. Everything else, though, it's kind of basic. She's just planting her swords in his body. That kick right there, that I love. But everything else, it's just very simplistic, and I don't like that. Peacekeeper is a mobile, agile, aggressive dancer of destruction. But here it's just, I'm going to put both swords in your back, laugh about it, and pull them out again. I just feel like that's lacking, which gives this an 11 out of 16, which is a 69%. Unfortunate. Next up is Nightingale Guillotine. Alright, we have some questions to ask about this one. First of all, lethality is 4 out of 4. I'll give it that because, of course, the decapitation. But for realism, I do have a question to ask. It's a little hard for me to tell, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the chats or comment section. There's one of two ways it could go. When she swings her sword to take off the head, is she swinging it across the shoulder first or from the front? Here's why that matters. If it's from the shoulder first, her dagger's handle will block her swing, which creates an obstacle to cutting off the head. But if it's to the front, then it is going to cut off the head, which would be a 4 out of 4. Let's see if we can change the perspective. It's just too hard to tell. Is she swinging and accidentally hitting her own dagger handle? Or is she missing the dagger handle entirely and taking off the neck easily? It's really hard to tell. And because it's so hard to tell, I had to give this a 3 out of 4 for realism. I just couldn't tell very well. For efficiency, I gave it a 3. Mostly because the knee strikes are a little unnecessary. Not because she buries the dagger in the shoulder, that's fine. It's because the knee strikes weren't needed. Once she put her dagger in his shoulder, from there she could stab him in the stomach multiple times, could stab him in the chest, could stab him in the neck, could stab him in the throat, could stab him in the leg. She could stab him in a lot of places. She did not need to do the knee strikes and then follow up with a taking off of the head. I'm a little tired of the decapitations, honestly. I'd like to see her do more with that dagger. Imagine instead of kneeing him, she just stabbed him in the chest a few times. Like, instead of those knees, stab, off with your head. That would have been good. I would have been really okay with that, but the knees weren't necessary. They're cool, but they're unnecessary. So that's a 3 for efficiency. And then for cool factor, it's a 3. It's a 3. I think I'm starting to lose my like for these decapitations because some of them are a little too easy and some of them are a little uncreative, especially when you have a dagger and short sword, which you can do a lot with. This is a good weapon combination. You don't need to keep decapitating over and over. Let's see some more stuff. But for what it is a 13 out of 16, which is an 81%. Next up is Stepped Stool. All right, I do like this attack. Lethality, 4 out of 4. Mostly for the placement of the dagger there. The placement of the dagger is phenomenal. It's right center mass, dead in the chest, right where the heart would be. And if that dagger gets enough penetration inward, you're dead. That's done. I like that a lot. That is very well done. And even if the stab itself, the thrown dagger itself did not kill, jumping on his chest would probably cave his rib cage. All that weight coming down on you at once. She planted her feet first when jumping on him. I like that. So like his rib cage is crushed, probably crushing his lung. That's a 4 out of 4 for lethality. For realism, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 4 as well. And here's why. I really like the fact that she threw the dagger and not the sword. The dagger, if you're going to throw any weapon, a dagger would be a fine weapon to throw because it's short, easily thrown. If it's weighted properly, it has a better chance of being landed. And the Peacekeeper, I imagine, would be well trained in throwing her dagger, so I think that works. Plus, she didn't just stand there and say, okay, I threw my dagger, you're dead now. No, she followed up, and this is realistic. You could do this. This is something all you could do. But for efficiency, I had to give it a 3, and I'll tell you why. It's because you can't always guarantee that the dagger is going to land the way you want it to or in the place you want it to, especially if you're throwing it center mass of the chest. It has to hit right in the center to get the heart. It has to be thrown in a way so that the blade enters and not the handle just bounces off the chest. And it has to go in deep enough to get the kill. That's a lot of variables you don't want to play with. So it had to lose a point for efficiency for me, but it is quick enough. And she does follow up with landing on his chest, which will definitely cause, most definitely cause a concave chest, and probably collapsing the rib cage and maybe puncturing the lung. So she does follow up, which is good, and she retrieves her dagger very quickly. So I'll give her that. But honestly, the dagger throw itself bothers me just a little because you can't guarantee that it will land where and how you want it each and every time. So that loses a point. For cool factor, I gave it a 3. And I mostly gave it a 3 because here's my thing about throwing weapons, okay? Here's my thing about throwing weapons. You shouldn't do them unless you're in a desperate situation, okay? If you're in a desperate situation where you need to get distance between yourself and your enemy, or you feel like there's no other way to kill your enemy without throwing something at them, I get that. But in a dueling situation, or in a situation where all you're doing is executing your enemy, like they're done, all you got to do is execute them and kill them, you don't need to throw your weapon. There's no need to throw your weapon when you could easily just charge in and you know what I would have liked to see? What if she jumped, landed feet first on him, and then when he hits the ground, plants both blades into his eyeballs, okay? Like, get medieval on him, for lack of a better term, but throwing your dagger, while I can believe Peacekeeper doing it, personally, I'm not a big fan of the idea of throwing your weapon just for the sake of an execution. I don't think that's always a good idea. Probably going to do a video about my thoughts on that later on, but that's my thoughts there. Anyway, that does give this a 14 out of 16, which is an 88%, so it still gets a good grade. Next up is Trepanation. Alright, so that's a 4 out of 4 for lethality. You've stabbed your blade right into his head. This man is dead. This man is done. Definitely like that. That was really cool to see. For realism, 4 out of 4. You could do this. This is something you could realistically do. Stabbing into the head like that. Yeah. Again, I would prefer 2 hands, but I know why she didn't do that. 2 out of 2 for efficiency, though. For efficiency, that is a 2 out of 2. My problem here is, notice the way she goes in for the jabs. Watch each one. When she goes in for the second jab with her dagger, she is not aiming for him. Notice that? Did you notice that? The dagger wasn't even close to hitting him. Look at it from another perspective. Look at that, see? Doesn't even get close to him. It's like she's stabbing away from him, and that doesn't make a lick of sense. If he caught her first stab, why did he grab the other one? That's not efficient. You need to aim for him both times. And then if he grabs both, okay, he grabs both. But that was a dumb idea. And second, I'm not a big fan of this idea of letting go of her sword to grab her dagger. Why is that? Because, well, you've let go of your sword while it's in your opponent's hand. What if he decides to use it against you now? That seems very stupid to do. So, no, not a fan of that. So that's a 2 for efficiency. For cool factor, it is a 3. I'll give this a 3. It's kind of creative how even though the warden has her in the bind, has her in a tough spot, she still thinks of a creative way to get out of it, using her ingenuity and understanding of her own weapons to finish the fight. That's fine. I can get behind that. So that's 3 for me, which gives this execution a 13 out of 16, which is an 81%. Very cool. Next up is Instant Regrets. Oh, boy. Let's go ahead and talk about this. 4 out of 4 for lethality because she took off the head. I mean, obviously. But then after that, it kind of goes downhill. For realism, this is a 2 out of 2 for several reasons. First of all, the taking off of the head bothers me a little bit. People always think, oh, well, if you cross the blades, then you know you're going to get an extra cut out of it. Not necessarily. When you cross blades to do a cut, only one blade is going to do any cutting. You realize that, right? It's going to be the blade in front. Take a look. We'll look at this from another perspective. Watch the way she cuts. Can you see which blade is in front? The dagger. The dagger was in front. Now, technically that's an okay thing because since the dagger is shorter, it's going to finish its cut before the longsword. So that means the longsword will still get something of a cut. But honestly, I don't like the way it's decapitated here. I don't think that's a good way to do it. I don't think that's efficient. She should remove both blades and then stab him through the head, or stab down through the back of his neck, something like that. You know, but taking off his head again, I'm getting sick of that. Second reason I don't like it for realism is because of what she does to him. She stabs both blades through his legs, and watch what he does. He falls down to his knees. Now, where are the blades going to go now? What are the blades pointing through? They're now going through his calves. I'm sorry, but the calves are now blocking the blades. Think about it. Think about it like this. The blades have gone through his upper leg. He's falling to his knees. The blades are now going to stop at his calves. They're going to meet his calf, and he's not going to be able to bend his knees any further. He's going to fall on his side or fall on his back in a way so that the blades are not bending against his calves. So him bending and falling to his knees like that should not happen. He should not be able to fall like that. Now, for efficiency, this is a 1. And can you guess why? Yeah. She plants both blades and then steps back to laugh at her work. No. You do not do this. You are disarming yourself in front of the enemy. You are disarming yourself on a battlefield. Why are you taking the time to laugh at him? Why are you taking the time to joke about it? And I know someone's going to go to the comments, oh, it's like it's a dueling scenario. I wouldn't even do this in a duel. I would not even do this in a duel. This is a great, egregious waste of time, showing disrespect to your opponent when there's no need to. You know, the funny thing is, in most duels, most people prefer a respectful opponent most of the time. Shows honor for yourself and honor to your enemy. So I wouldn't have even done that in a duel. That seems really silly to me, especially since you're running the risk of bending your own blades when he falls on his knees. Oh, man, 1 for efficiency here. This was bad. And then for cool factor, it's a 2. I just don't like this. I know that some people like it because it's a reference to a movie scene, which a lot of people like. I've never seen the movie. I have no desire to see the movie. And frankly, this is goofy. This is not one that I really like. This is a 9 out of 16, which is a 56%. Next up is Olay. Alright, for lethality, we've got a 4 out of 4 here. The blades are planted in specific spots. Now, none of those places are going to be where a lot of vital organs are, but the way she yanks them out implies that they're cutting on the way out. Like, instead of just pulling straight out from the stab, she's yanking them out from the side, kind of a slicing motion, which is going to cause more internal damage as they slice. So that's probably going to cause a lot of internal damage and cutting. So definitely think that that's going to be very deadly. So 4 out of 4 for that one. For realism, I'm going to give it a 3. Look at the way he rolls after that. I don't know if you'd be able to pull them out with enough force to cause that kind of spin. So that's a 3 for realism. For efficiency, I give it a 4. This is very quick, very effective. You know, you're dodging his strikes, showing your skill as a warrior, showing great personality here. This is very well done, and you never, even though, okay, yes, technically she did disarm herself by letting go of the blades, but she instantly got them back after she finished her striking. Like, I can't even see if she, like, let go of them at any real point. Let's look at it from another perspective and see if we can see. Oh, she was just changing hands. That's all she was doing. Okay, she was changing her hands. All right, that's more understandable. So yeah, 4 out of 4 for efficiency here. She did not deliberately expose herself while doing that. That was a dancing motion. Very well done, so I'll give it that. For cool factor, I gave it a 3. I do like this. I do like this technique. It feels like something Peacekeeper would do. It shows a lot of skill, a little bit of badassery, kind of an arrogance to it. You know, I like that. I like that from Peacekeeper, so I gave it a 3. Which gives this a 14 out of 16, which is an 88%. Lovely. Next up is Sunday Roast. Alright, well, we have a decapitation again. 4 out of 4 for lethality. Easy. Lots of lethality high scores. I think all of them so far have been 4s for lethality. Man, Peacekeeper really deadly. For realism, 4 out of 4. 4 out of 4 for realism. This is all stuff you could do. Trapping the arm, taking off the head. You could do that. Yeah. I don't really like that it's one-handed. I'm getting a little tired of that. But technically what she's doing is, by trapping the arm, she's ensuring that the body's going to stay motionless while she does the cut. So that's basically holding the meat in place so that she can finish the strike. So that works. That's fine. For efficiency, I gave it a 4 out of 4. Efficiency-wise, it's 4 out of 4. It's done well. She's trapping the opponent. She's getting rid of him. She doesn't disarm herself. She's staying in motion. She drops him like a rock and then moves on with her life. That's fine. I'm good with that. But for cool factor, I'm getting sick of the decapitations. I gave it a 2 out of 4. Just too many decapitations when there are lots of other things she could do. While his arm is trapped, why not stab him in the chest? You know, why not? You know, stab him in the side of the head. You know, there are things you could do, and I feel like she's not taking full advantage of her kit. She's just taking off heads. But for what it is, it's fine. So that's a 14 out of 16, which is an 88%. Next up is over-under. Alright, over-under. This is the first one so far I have to give a 3 out of 4 for lethality. Now, hear me out as to why. This is another throat cut. And unlike the first one that we saw, where it was very clear how deep and how effective the cut was, this cut feels a little different. I can't quite place it, but how can I be sure that that's getting the depth necessary to kill? I think it is. I think it's getting the depth necessary to kill, but at the same time, the way she's kind of doing her backhanded strike to get it, that feels off to me. That feels a little off. I think it would have been better if she held the dagger in a reverse grip and stabbed backwards, sending the blade up into his neck or into his chin or into the bottom of the throat. Then I might have bought that. Then that might have been a surefire. But for what it is, she's doing a backward slash. And I can't say for... Let's change perspective. Let's try it from this perspective. Yeah, it's definitely cutting the throat, but is it deep enough? I can't tell. I see blood spray. Everyone's like, oh, but what about the blood spray? They put blood on everything. I mean, look at this. Look at this right here when she rolls across his chest. Look at all that blood just from pulling out the blade. That wouldn't get enough blood on there that quickly. Sometimes I think they add a little too much blood just because they want to be graphic. But I can't be sure, so I gave it a 3 out of 4. That's the best I'll go, 3 out of 4. For realism, 4 out of 4. You could do this. This is something you could feasibly do. Doesn't require any superhuman feats or strength to do. For efficiency, 4 out of 4 again. She is getting this done very quickly. The roll's a little silly, but there's nothing technically wrong with it. If you can pull it off, you know? Go for that style point. And the cut is fast, and then she's ready to move on. I mean, I like the fact that she kind of goes into a ready guard position, so she's ready to get on with her life, you know? And for cool factor, I gave it a 2. I don't know. I think it's because I just can't be sure about that last cut. I feel like if she stabbed upwards, this would have been a lot better for me. I would have liked this one a lot more. But for what it is, it's just a roll, slice, and done. And I don't know. I feel like if she just stabbed it... I know that I say that I don't like the reverse grip, but in this case, I feel like the reverse grip and jab upward would have been a much better idea. But for what it is, this is a 13 out of 16, which is an 81%. This is good form. Alright, for good form, we have a 4 out of 4 for lethality. Back to form there, yep. Stab through the throat, nice, that's definitely going to kill. For realism, 4 out of 4. You could do this. None of this is impossible. You could pull this off. For efficiency, though, I had to give it a 2. The jab into the stomach is fine, the jab into the throat is fine, but he's dead. There's no need for this slow slide off. Yank your sword out, get on with the fight. Standing there and just kind of gloating about it, not necessary. I get what she's doing. It's kind of this mocking, good form, or good show, old boy. Kind of like that, kind of a duelist kind of pose, and that's fine, but again, you're on the battlefield. Get on with it. And when I look at efficiency, I always look at, is this something you'd want to do on a battleground? Is this something you'd want to use on a battlefield? And this, everything up till right now, no, I wouldn't want to do this part. For cool factor, it's a 2. I don't know. I hate to say it, but this is a little underwhelming. If the gloating is the only fancy thing about this and the deadly part is just the stab in the throat, we've seen that a few times now. Letting him slide off slowly like that, I don't know. It's lacking in efficiency, and it just kind of looks meh. It almost looks like Peacekeeper's trying too hard to be cool. You don't need to try this hard. You're naturally cool. You don't need to gloat like that. If you have to gloat in everything you do, you might be lacking, compensating for something, as it were. But it's a 12 out of 16, which is a 75%, so take that for what it's worth. Next up is Led to Slaughter. Alright, well, decapitated, 4 out of 4 for lethality. Okay. For realism, I'm going to give it a 3. Okay, so here's the reason why I say this. The way he's on his knees here and the way she does her blade strike... Okay, I'm sick of the decapitations, but with this one, I'm just kind of like, how did you do that? It's almost like a slap. Look at it. Slap. I almost feel like that's what you do when you slap. There's no weight. I don't feel any strength behind that swing. It almost feels like, I'm going to slap you. Look, when you cut off someone's head, you usually want to do it in either a downward stroke or with a heavy sword and a very powerful two-handed strike. Here, it's one-handed, and there's no real apparent level of strength. At least with some of the others we saw, there was a downward stroke, or it was clear she was putting weight behind it. Here, it's just slap, and then it comes off. Still, technically, you could maybe do it, but I have my doubts, so that's a 3. For efficiency, I give it a 4. It's fast. It's effective. You got it done. That's not bad. For cool factor, though, 2. Again, with the decapitations, I'm just getting tired of them. You have a great toolkit. Use other stuff. So this is a 13 out of 16, which is an 81%. Next up is the Sacrifice. Oh no. Okay, so she's laying him over her knee so that she can stab him in the waistband. That's not good. I'm going to have to give this a 2 out of 4 for lethality, because there's nothing in the waistband other than your bowels that's going to be impacted by this. Sure, you're probably going to cause an inner infection. Sure, you're probably going to cause a lot of pain. Sure, you're going to probably cause a lot of bleed out. But you're not going to kill instantly with the stab. You're going to cause pain. They're going to be in a lot of pain. This is probably going to be very bad for them, and they'll probably die later on, but not right now. And right now is the issue. You need to have him dead. So that's a 2 out of 4 for lethality. For realism, 4 out of 4. You could do that. Yeah, that's realistic. You could figure this one out. And I do kind of like the way that she looks like she's stabbing down like a sacrifice. So yeah, that's good. For efficiency, 4 out of 4. Again, fast enough. She kept her guard up. She kept her swords in hand. She got it done fast and got rid of him. So yeah, there's that. And then for cool factor, it's a 2. It's just a 2. I don't know. The stabbing is fine. Everything. At least it's somewhat creative now. It's not just a decapitation. But when I said stop decapitating, I still wanted you to kill the guy, So I don't know. So that's a 12 out of 16, which is a 75%. Next up is arrow in the head. Alright, so that's a 4 out of 4 for lethality. You put a crossbow bolt in someone's head, they're probably dead. For realism, yeah, 4 out of 4. You could do this. You could aim a crossbow bolt directly at someone's head. In fact, one thing that I'm sure someone's going to point out is, hey, why wasn't there any recoil on that? She shot him one-handed. Believe it or not, crossbows don't really have recoil because all the force is going forward. Like, so that's totally believable. And there were many crossbows like that in history, so it's possible. I think it's more unrealistic that she pulled it out of nowhere, but hey, come on. The invisible pocket, you know, that happens. That happens in video games all the time, so we'll let it slide. For efficiency, I gave it a 2. Not because she puts away her swords. I don't think that's the real issue. It's that you didn't need to pull out the crossbow. And then when you did do it, you didn't need to stand there and taunt him. She tells him, at least you tried in Latin. There was no need to pause. There was no need to take your time there, especially when you consider that instead of just pulling out her sword and putting them away and then grabbing the crossbow, she takes the time to cut him. She takes the time to actually do a few slashes to get him on his knees. If you're going to do the slashes anyway, why not just finish him off? I feel like you could, but, you know, what it is. And for cool factor, 4 out of 4. I love crossbows. I think crossbows are awesome. So the fact that she used one here is great. And I loved that she just put it in his head. I think that's, I like the little turn he does, like, huh? Because what she says is, at least you tried. That's what she's saying to him. And so it's almost like, oh, you think I did okay? So I kind of like that. So that is a 14 out of 16, which is an 88%. And we end with Disarmor. Alright, well this is lethal. Taking off the arm and then just stabbing into the throat is perfectly fine. That's definitely going to kill, so that's 4 out of 4. For realism, I'm going to give it a 3, and a lot of it has to do with the taking off of the arm. She's using her dagger to cut off his arm. Now, you can cut off an arm with a dagger, but first of all, it requires a lot of strength. A lot of weight needs to come down on the arm. There's got to be a lot of tension on the arm, and I don't think you could do it in one solid motion. In fact, she strikes down, pauses a moment, and then pushes down again to take off the arm. I don't think that's what should have happened. I think she should have. I think what she should have done in this is stabbed the arm, like stabbed into the arm and punched it down. You know, that would have been okay. Not take off the arm, but just stab the arm. But if you had to take it off, why not saw off the arm with the dagger? Make this brutal. Like she just kind of does a sawing motion, like you're cutting a steak. Like. Saw the arm off. That would be brutal and so awful to watch. It'd be gut wrenching. And For Honor's done gut wrenching. Okay, guys, you can afford to do it. And then for efficiency, 4 out of 4. It's fast. It's deadly. She keeps her guard up. She strikes in the neck and then moves on. So that's serviceable. But for cool factor, I'm going to give it a 3. At least she didn't take off the head this time. And hey, this is the first removal of an arm we've had from her. So that's good. I'm glad that she did that. It's somewhat unique. But I think my issue is the taking off of the arm was just a little unrealistic. I don't think that I fully buy that. I think there were better ways to do this. Especially, you have tension on the arm. Maybe stab him in the chest. I saw so few chest stabs in these. I feel like you could have done more than just aim for the throat. You know, all of these executions seem to either be taking off the head or stabbing through the throat. I like strikes to the chest, you know, stab him through the chest, or multiple stabs to the chest, like stab him multiple times, you know. There are ways you can use the dagger and sword combo that are just not being utilized here. But for what it is, it's fine. That's why it got a 3. So that's a 14 out of 16, which is an 88%. All right, everybody, and that wraps up all of her execution. So, what did she get? Well, after rounding it all up and getting the averages that we needed, Peacekeeper comes out with an average of 81%. Wow, that was not what I was expecting. Honestly, when I started with Peacekeeper, I was really thinking, you know what, she's just going to be one of the best. She's going to be one of the best out there. She's got absolutely phenomenal executions, and she's a deadly assassin. She's going to have a lot of high points. But I was surprised. What really happened here, as I look back over her scores, she was incredibly lethal. Almost all of her executions were 4 out of 4 lethal. Almost all of them were just fantastic in lethality. Only one really didn't look that lethal to me, and that was the sacrifice one, which was okay, but it could have been a lot better. What really hurt her was the fact that her efficiency and cool factor scores, and for a decent bit, her realism scores were just kind of okay. Her realism scores weren't bad. She got decent realism scores. They weren't all terrible. But in efficiency, they were just kind of average. Like, some of them were faster than others. Some of them were okay. She disarmed herself in a few moments. She took too much time in others. She gloated in some, which really hurt her. Look, PK, I love you, but you don't need to gloat. This man's dead. What are you trying to prove, you know? Are you hoping he'll brag about you in the afterlife? Whatever the case. because of those average scores, I think it dragged her score down to average. Despite her being very, very lethal, I think that in other areas like realism, flashiness, and personality and efficiency, it made her suffer a little bit and just brought her down to average into a B score. And that's what an 81 is, a B score. And you know what? Fair point there. I mean, it's fine. I think she did fair. It's not all bad. I just think she could have done a little better. Maybe have some more variety in how she strikes and how she uses her weapons. Maybe have some more mix-ups. Aim for the chest a few times, you know. Do multiple strikes instead of just one strike. Take full advantage of what you have at your disposal. And as for efficiency, be quick and don't gloat about your stuff. I think if you just fix those things, you'd have a much better score here. But 81 isn't bad. That's still pretty good. What do you guys think? Did y'all expect this score? Is this what you thought it would be? Is it lower than you thought? Higher than you thought? What do you think of Peacekeeper's grades? Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll be releasing a video sometime in the future going over efficiency a little bit more in detail and explaining my thoughts on it. But for now, I think that wraps up this video. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, I will see you in my next video. Take care.